Okay, great. Hello, everybody. My name is Casey Labonte, and I'm the Food as Medicine Program Coordinator with Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. Welcome to our panel discussion today on food as medicine with a focus on food systems connections. Let's start with some introductions. And Courtney, why don't you go first? I'm going to set a timer so everybody has 2 minutes. Go ahead, whenever you're ready.
Great. Thanks, Casey. Hi, all. My name's Courtney Long. I work with a food systems program at Iowa State Extension and then also direct the Agricultural Marketing Resource Center. A lot of our work centers around being the generalists in the food system and trying to understand how all of the pieces are connected from production and growing practices to processing and adding value to raw products to how that food is distributed and consumed, and then what happens with our resources in terms of creating more food as we go to our next steps. So that's work me as a personal me. I'm a daughter and a sister. I'm friend and colleague across lots of different spaces, which is amazing. And I'm here because I love learning different ways of knowing and collaborating across intentional food systems work, and just making relationships and figuring out how we connect together.
Great. Spring.
Good morning. My name is Spring Alaska Schreiner. I'm a Nupiaq. My Nupiaq name is Upingstrak. I'm originally born and raised in Valdez, Alaska, Chugach, Alaska Native Corporation, Valdez Native Tribe. Our family's from Nome, Alaska. So as I speak today, knowing that we're from Alaska, it's we come from different regions, the Arctic. We have different food sources than down here in the lower 48, and also how it intertwines with growing food too. I'm the owner and CEO of Sakari Farms. I do a lot of grant writing, policy work for climate change and tribal food systems. We are a food education farm, so we do a lot of tribal farm tours. We have Nikwi Kitchen, which is our, excuse me, our tribal commercial kitchen where we create value-added traditional food products. We have the tribal Pacific Northwest Tribal Food Seed or Tribal Seed Bank. Sorry, I just woke up. We also have the Pacific Northwest Intertribal Ag Producer Guide. So I created this guide where people in the Northwest can find each other's foods. We do have a farm also. I'm just trying to think of all the things that we do here. Yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a big need for tribal food sovereignty and saving our traditional foods here in Indian country and throughout the US. So I'm noticing that a lot of that isn't being addressed. So I thought I'd take that beast on, and it's a constant learning process. So I'm really excited to learn from everyone today and see how I can provide any insight and help. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Erin, whenever you're ready.
Hi, everybody. Erin Meyer here. I am a mom, a wife, a daughter. I am also a chef RD with a background in food systems. And I am the founder and executive director of Basil's Harvest, which is a nonprofit. And I feel like my 35 years of experience really brought me to Basil's Harvest. I was a certified diabetes educator when I first started my career. And I realized that I needed and wanted more food background. So I went to culinary school. And after culinary school and working, I had an opportunity to stay home with my two daughters, which we raised on a 12-acre plot of land that had water and woods, and we had animals, and we had a huge garden. And when I left the hospital to stay home as a stay-at-home mom, I'll put that in quotes, after 2 weeks, I realized that that really was not a good idea. So I started a food business called Basil's Harvest, where we were contracting with farmers, and I was schlepping my two young daughters to the farmers market every week. And we started with one product, added another product, and it just continued to build and build. And building that local farm network was really important to me, and educating people. And as we transitioned from that, I started working in the nonprofit realm, bringing food professionals to the farm to connect them to where their food's coming from, not only as hey, how you can purchase this food, but also making connection with the earth. And the missing piece for me was healthcare, that we needed to bring healthcare professionals and put their hands in the soil. So I left that position and I started Basil's Harvest. It's a nonprofit that we catalyze food system transformation with food and within the food and health sectors through collaboration experiential training. And our approach revolves around two key strategies: fostering multidisciplinary partnerships to build ecosystems and empowering emerging leaders through hands-on training and education. We have three key areas of work: culinary medicine program. So we partner with a hospital and a medical school to create curriculum and bring physicians into the kitchen to put a knife in their hand to really connect them to food, to help them with this interaction with their patients. We also have regenerative ag in the heartland, which is creating regional markets to institutions. And we have CRAF, and CRAF is the Coalition of Regenerative Ag, Food, and Health Professionals. And we have this program where we're advocating for a systems-based approach centered around the idea that healthy soil growing healthy foods for healthy people and a healthy planet. Our overarching goal is to foster a holistic understanding of the relationship between food, health, and the environment through all of these endeavors that we bring and work through.
Great. Thank you so much. Happy to have you here. And Summer.
Good day, everyone. I was gonna say good morning, but I was like, is it morning in Alaska? So good day, everyone. I am Summer Sibley Brown, and I am right now coming in from St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. Who I am a daughter, a wife. I think I'm a food systems advocate most days, sometimes a food systems strategist. And I am the founder and executive director of Virgin Islands Good Food. And my why I'm here is because food matters, matters deeply. I live in a place where we import 98% of our food, where we look at the intersections of health, environment, economics, and I see food as a pillar that can shift these intersections in a more positive direction. Virgin Islands Good Food Coalition has been around since 2012. We are a place-based organization, so we serve three islands: St. Thomas, St. Croix, St. John. And we were just beginning to work with Puerto Rico and the British Virgin Islands. And so food for me is a place of joy. It's a place of identity. It's a place of cultural conservation and preservation, but it's also like the space of the future, because we can't do anything without it, really. So making sure that we have it and we know how to use it and we know what it means to us as a people is super important for me. So we work at food security, food sovereignty, and sustainable and regenerative practices are things we seek to raise awareness about.
Beautiful. Thank you. We'll get right started with our first question, which is, can you describe what food as medicine means to you? And as you know, we've asked you to prepare some images for this. If you have those, great. If you don't, no worries. And we will start with Erin.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, can you see the image?
We can.
Okay, great. So the image, I think, is somewhat self-explanatory, and while it talks about that food as medicine is a regenerative food system that will heal our planet, it can feed sustainability, um, feed urban and rural communities, and will improve community health, wealth, and the well-being by reinvesting in local economies. Ultimately, it's about relationships and bringing people together and conversations, to work to create change. And the way that we do that in terms of what food is medicine is to us, it's really looking through the relationships within the regional regenerative food system, thinking about our work within healthy soils and how that connects to not only to food, but to people, our farmers, the people that they're growing for, the nutrient density in terms of those connections to not the plant, the animal, and the people, and how that all interconnects to us as humans and in building healthy communities, thinking about not only the health and well-being of people, but the economic and the social and the environmental impacts to our communities. And I can go a little bit through the pictures of the slides of um, just real quickly in terms of soil. What we have there is our research team collecting soil samples and working with farmers, really getting our hands dirty. I mean, that's a big part of what we do within the experiential realm. The nutrient dense food, how the practices are growing it, but how it moves into hospital trays or onto plates and tables, working with medical students and getting them into the garden and getting them into the kitchen, that experiential standpoint, and then healthy communities, the impact, like I said, so it's creating a regional regenerative food system.
Great. Thank you.
I can stop share. There we go.
Awesome. And Summer, if you are ready.
So for us, and when I say us, this is the first time I'm sharing this graphic. And just in full transparency, I did not remember that I was supposed to do this. And I was like, oh my gosh, what do I have that can tell the story by pictures? And this is a graphic created by a graphic artist for our Island Food System Summit. So this is actually what we, my community, see food as medicine as in the corner, there's a picture of a hand holding a hand, right?
Mm.
And so when I think of food as medicine, I think about what it means for the next generation of Virgin Islander to have access to environment, to health, to I'm gonna call them indigenous ways of knowing that I take hold indigeneity and the commentary around it very lightly, because the indigenous of the Virgin Islands were wiped out, and I'm always grasping with what is secondary indigeneity and when will me as an African descendant be indigenous to this place where I live, if I will ever. But like the different ways of knowing and understanding and relating food, and the way that it brings healing to myself, it's food as healing also means that people don't have to stress about it, right? Like it's not just the physical health piece, but the mental aspects of having access to food that you identify as your own, that you are sure what is in it, and the nutrient density of it, and that your body feels alive when you eat it. It's the reduction of non-communicable diseases like diabetes and hypertension in my community, and morbid obesity, and even in my own physical body. When I think about what food as medicine is, it's knowing that you can put something in your mouth and what comes out of it is an ultimate version of health and happiness and joy, from the item that is food. There's a Sankofa bird here, and it speaks to going back, right? Reaching back and getting something that was ours, that through globalization of food, through, the commercialization of food, that has somehow been lost from a generation. Food as medicine also speaks to the need for the people who grow the food to have the economics necessary to be able to take care of them and provide themselves. Um, Food is medicine. If you look in the corner, there is a fist, and right, it's the aspect of decolonization and not empowering people, but allowing our community to stand in power and truth about what they understand food to be and using it in the ways that we know. right? That we know. I live in a place where this morning I wasn't feeling well, and my grandmother made me brown papaya leaf tea. And she's like, you know, this is a cure-all, right? And it's bitter and it's awful tasting, but it's the medicine that we knew that was just right outside the door that fell off of the papaya tree, and it was waiting for me, right? We didn't even have to pick it. It was waiting. And it's making sure that all of the generations that come after me are connected to the generations before, that they know what a brown papaya leaf is used for. So that's food is medicine for me.
Thank you, Summer. Court?
All right. So lovely, both of these responses so far. So food is medicine to me. We all eat and we all eat differently. And I feel like that's because of many things that have already been mentioned, but some that come to me in this space are our culture, our nutritional needs, but also affordability and accessibility to those foods and the food thinking the opportunity with different communities. And so I was trying to gather some pictures from various spaces that were able to be with folks. So food as me is also, let's see, seeing and valuing the food, not only that we consume, but also that goes into what goes into our growing practices or raising and harvesting, preparing and being with each other in kitchens and kitchen tables or outside in lovely spaces. I feel like it's really easy to get so caught up in this fast pace of life, and food can slow us down. And Lord knows I'm very guilty of moving at a quick pace. But when I was thinking through food as medicine, I feel like it's just a space where we can come together and be with each other in this area. I also think that means celebrating where we're at and where we're headed. And again, it looks different in every community. This happens to be an example of our community food systems and farm to school and early care event, but it's such a great space to celebrate the things that are going on and discuss the things that are coming up. And as Aaron and Summer have mentioned too, I feel food as medicine is the relationships and the people we are with, and that it is what nourishes and can empower and make us think differently around our food and our health and our economic systems. And so I wanted to end with that on, this is a little bit broader than food as medicine, but just thinking through all of the different components that impact our food system and at various scales, whether that's hyper local and being in markets together, or it's our industrial food system that allows for cheaper and more affordable foods to be on everyone's plates. But thinking through those different environmental systems, the culture and nutrition or wellness around that, the diversity, equity, and inclusion practices that need to be in place, and also the policies and the economic aspects. And so everything is so interconnected.
Great, thank you. And Spring.
Okay, I'm gonna try and share my screen here. Let's see. Cool. So what food medicine as medicine is to me, I'm gonna try and balance both of these here, is to me, it is seventh generation. It's trying to keep our youth involved. It's trying to make that connection with our societal sicknesses right now and taking us back to where we used to be. So encouraging traditional tribal trade routes, because that's how we were connected in community. And that's to me where food as medicine comes in, is it always was brought together with ceremony. Like right now it's root gathering. So everyone's coming together and sharing stories, sharing what they need. Everyone's gifting everyone something. Everyone is participating in that traditional activity, that historical activity that has been removed from us. So it's celebrating life, our traditions, and it's keeping us healthier because as you participate in these events, it reminds you of your past and kind of the responsibility you have to continue that. So I have a slide here. This is my business plan. So when I teach business planning to other traditional farmers or native people, I'm like, hey, let's work with that original circle, that OG, our 4 ways of 4 seasons, that circle of life and living and seasons. So I broke it down. It's hard to do in 3 minutes, but we work in food sovereignty, reparations, how we give to others by raising money and, giving blankets and food ceremonies. How do we take those traditional trade routes to go visit our relatives that aren't from our tribe? I do a lot of, I really like force a lot of intertribal language in the work I do, because I'm living in an area in Oregon where I don't have my tribe. I don't have my people and my community. So there's a lot of other intertribal people here that are like, help, I need help. I want to reconnect. So, by bringing all these people in and all their skill sets and ancestral blood memory, we're increasing that trade route and that knowledge. And so I don't have enough time to go through this, but we incorporate everything into either giving, growing, or bringing people in to discuss some of their needs. And this is my favorite. The 3 girls down here are from tribes in this region. They're from all over the place. And we bring them in really young to teach them how to do everything from scratch, because then they don't have to necessarily spend all this time learning like I had to the hard way. Grant writing, media, graphic design, getting them in the kitchen, teaching them how to make their own recipes by gathering their own traditional foods that we grow and creating their own business models. So that's what food is medicine to me. They're all learning from each other. They're gossiping. They're telling each other stories when I'm not there. I'm checking in on them. I'm like, hey, let's keep working. And they're like, we just made this big breakthrough with this event we're having or that. And that's what we need. That is food is medicine, is bringing those foods together and having everyone work together. I think I'm out of time, but yeah, just basically keeping everyone together with our blood memory and ancestral work that's needed to be done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. That was really lovely and wonderful to start us off. I'd love to open it up for a few minutes for some group reflection, questions, supports, comments.
So I just want to say how beautiful your stories were. I was sitting here listening and I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, those are so beautiful. I want to do mine over. Um, just it gave me chills because like you pulled it from your roots and the tips of your toes and it just exuded. And I'm just so thankful that you shared that. That's really what I want to say, because it really is the auspice of I think what I don't want to say what we're all trying to do, but what we're at Basil's Harvest, what we're trying to pull in, that's not normal for one, how I was raised. I mean, it's that emotional connection. And so to work to bring that emotional connection out, and I hear it in your voices and in your actions and on screen, and how, we try to take that out into the world, and it's not easy work. And so I just want to acknowledge that in the work that you're doing, and that it is hard work, but it's so rewarding. Each little step is rewarding. Sometimes even the 2 steps back, because we have to learn, and then to take 3 steps forward, right? So it's that push pull. So I just wanted to acknowledge everybody, and it was just beautiful.
I will jump in, Erin, and say that I think the benefit of the work that I get to do, and even to the place where I'm able to talk about what food as medicine means to me now, comes from actually partnering with Courtney, right? And meeting people like you and Spring and Casey, right? And like having a space where there is this questioning and this discussion, and really forcing me back inside to be like, what does it mean to me? I think for so many of us, we're not in this conversation every day.
Mhm.
And Spring, to your point, we're not bringing in our young people and giving them not just the like traditional blood and ancestral skills, but also the transitional skills that help them turn this into like livelihoods and opportunities to spread this and like recultivate what it means, and not just what it means ancestrally, but what it means for the future, right? Like, how are we using it to build? And so I think there's this marriage of both that these relationships are allowing us to emerge, um, emerge, bringing past forward.
Yeah, I can jump in. I think what I'm seeing too is I've done a few of these panels before and I'm meeting people I've never met, a lot of women too, which I'm excited about. And it's hard leaving everyone because I think it's important too that we all go see what we're doing because we need to get out of our box that we're in, which to us at the time is like the center of the world. But seeing other people will let us bring back knowledge to share. Because we, at our age, because we're not young, teaching is learning. And so like combining ourselves with other women and that energy and having, the ancestors bring us together. I think it's really important too that we continue relationships after this so that we can help others by helping ourselves too. And I think that's part of food as medicine, is just hearing everyone has amazing things going on. We're not gonna figure it all out till we're done. Especially, I'm a mom too, an auntie, and it's like my job is, we work every day because we own this business, but it's a lot. And I think, separating ourselves from all these roles that we carry as women traditionally, now we're business owners, we're running multiple organizations, taking some time for ourselves to be with each other and learn is really important too, because it helps with that skill set that we can take to others. And that's what food is medicine is like. We can talk about what we're growing individually here, but it's this holistic view of like, we're taking on a lot as we always have in our cultures,
Thank you all so much for those reflections. This segues beautifully into our next question that leads right into the importance of seeing other people and togetherness. We are wondering, how has the COVID-19 pandemic influenced the integration of food as medicine principles into your work? And we would love to hear from Summer first.
Oh my goodness, I feel like in many ways the pandemic forced a return to food as medicine. A lot of people in my community, one, started gardening again, started backyard growing food, started turning to traditional herbs and medicines and asking people, what is it we traditionally drink for these, and making home remedies to complement and make sure that their immune systems were stronger. But the other thing that I saw is people started cooking again. People started baking again. People started seeking fresher ingredients again, right? Like the return to the kitchen happened, um where there was like this whole movement on Facebook. I don't know if it like happened for you all too, but like our Facebook and Instagram communities was a lot of recipe sharing in terms of like traditional breads and baking and like home recipes. And so for me, that's what happened. It jolted a return to the homeopathic medicine that we know, that we don't name as homeopathic, but it's what's in our backyard. It helped people want to garden. I think our garden stores did so well during that time when we could go out. And then like the fresh, specifically baking, the fresh baking was a big thing. And I think, where it's usually a product that has a lot of preservatives in it and things that are, of effect. So having access to fresh bread is a thing. So it was a resurgence of a skill.
Great, thank you. Courtney?
Yeah. So I was reflecting back on this, and when COVID began, I was also starting my doctoral research looking at resilient food systems, and initially was just going to be like natural disaster impacts on our food and our food system. And when COVID came in so strong, I added that to as an additional disaster that we were looking at for impacts. And a lot of what Summer said, I think personally was also witnessing that, here in Iowa. But also saw just that it highlighted our reliance on large supply chains and large scale companies, and just that need and immediacy around food. And I think when those bottlenecks occurred and being unable to get the things that we're so used to and are used to again now, of just being able to find whatever we want in the grocery store, I think that shift really had people, again, like Summer mentioned, reconnecting to the land, trying to understand where our local producers and farmers are, where are the processors that we can take livestock to, and those then had years that they were, like starting to have backups for getting into. So I think that was really incredible to just watch that quick transition to going back to our relationships and our communities to find our food and our resources. And sort of then disappointing to also see, as soon as we were able to go back, as soon as we went back to normal, we've changed those habits again. We're going back to the ways of which is like the most convenient, comfortable, etc. But I think a few of the other things that I thought was so empowering to watch during COVID was how innovative folks were, and just like the people turned it up to figure out how to work in that space. And so I just wrote down a handful, but like seeing farmers markets really work to change policy so they could remain open, and people understanding that our farmers and our food businesses and our retailers are like, those are essential workers, and they continue to be able to feed us and be there. Seeing small cooperatives or grocers pivot and start doing like door-to-door delivery, or having online sales, and shifting the business practices. And I think last, like that time at home, I know I was cooking more during COVID, and just spending time with people, and again, that like slowdown that it forced us to have, are some of the things I noticed during COVID.
Thank you. Spring?
I'm sharing my screen again because it's awesome. I just found some pictures from COVID. Yeah, I think there's pros and cons. I liked seeing that it made everyone eat again and cook and slow down and communicate. Farmers market, you're right. It did get a little tense with everyone being worried about themselves in public spaces, but it did encourage everyone to start remembering what food they needed. I remember when the grocery store had shut down all the way. The roads were shut, everything was shut down, and everyone's had to work with what they had at their house. Our farm hosts freezers full of bison, fish, berries. So we had all the food that everyone needs in a traditional form. This is what we did, is we just stopped that business model and started donating all of our food. And our food boxes, here's a picture of one here, has medicine in it. It has our native seed packets, it has recipes, and then you get sweetgrass, cedar, and sage and tobacco. So then you're getting, it's like the tribal food box, the ultimate CSA box. And I think all the elders really like that, because we couldn't get to the reservation. There was like a stoppage at the border. We had to figure out how to get food to people that way. So having medicine in it was incredible, because there was a lot of people passing. Here's some of our tribal food boxes. I noticed also, maybe some of you too, a large amount of funding coming in for food systems. So it really helped, small business owners and farmers get this big flux of money. The problem is it's gone now. So everyone became dependent on this giving model, which was working great. And now what do we do? It was kind of unfortunate. And this is, oh no, it's not going to show up. This is another photo that won't pull up. There it is on our screen here. Sorry. Oh, going the wrong way. I had it picked out.
I love the dog.
Yeah, that's a farm dog, Otis. But then we gave away, like, here's our tribal food boxes, and we had another organization donate 500 huge slabs of Chinook salmon. So for our people, that food is medicine, is having that fresh fish, that fresh native medicine. They're not getting a tribal food box or a CSA box that is full of foods they won't eat, don't know how to use. It was all their traditional food that made them feel safe. The creator is helping, it's medicine. and also to help the ceremony because so many people were passing. So that's kind of what I have on how COVID impacted us. Is it helped us get that boost financially. It also helped remind us that everyone needs food. There's a huge inability to get people food. They can't afford food. And it kind of reminded me that, hey, this is how we're switching our business model. So now we grow all the food on the farm, donate it first, then make travel food products with it, and then teach classes and farm tours. So it's this cycle of like giving first, because that's what natives do, is that's how we live longer. We just give everything away first. That's kind of how it impacted us. And we're really thankful for that learning lesson.
Thank you so much. Those images were great. And Erin.
So COVID, yeah, it really brought back a lot of memories. From a personal perspective, for me, it brought my family together again. That was a gold nugget of COVID. It brought my two daughters home, and we hadn't been together, just life growing up, hadn't been together for over 10 years. And so we spent quite a bit of time together. So that was just a huge blessing in itself. From a work perspective, COVID basically stopped everything that we were doing. We were working on a farm to hospital project, and COVID hit, and we were working with small grains. And so it was small grain farmers and a mill, and the mill had just opened for business maybe 2 years prior to COVID. And so their wholesale business was ramping up and their retail business was nominal, maybe 5 orders a month. And when COVID hit, wholesale shut down for them, and retail went from 5 to 10 orders a month to 500 a day. So when you're talking about the just-in-time supply chain and that broke down, there's no flour on the shelves, talking about people starting to cook and bake, that like you said, baking is that sense for a lot of people, it's love. And so they went back into the kitchen. And so watching that transition for this business was truly eye-opening in many ways. This business had 6 employees, and the farmer's wife was a retired teacher, and she went back to her students who were home from college because the colleges shut down and sent everybody home. So this mill went from 6 employees for one shift to 26 employees, 3 shifts. And so watching how a community comes together to support one another and to provide to the public, that was awe-inspiring. The other thing that happened with COVID is that our work stopped, and our funders were so gracious. They said, "We understand what's happening. All that we ask is that you join the movement in some way, shape, or form." So I'm from the Chicagoland region, and all of these organizations and businesses came together and figured out how to feed the essential workers, how to create food boxes. I mean, so there were multiple agencies and organizations that took different sectors of the food system and started using the funds that were coming in to figure out how to move food boxes, how to take care of health and well-being in terms of working with the essential workers in terms of safety. Like, just to give an example, we needed masks. So I was on the team that organized how to get masks to farmers and to deal with those safety pieces. So coming together as a community, and these groups still exist, and it built this foundation for collaboration within the food system. So while COVID was horrific, there were gold nuggets. And what we're seeing in Illinois, the push in policy for local food systems, the money that's coming in from the federal government and the state government, and it's like, I think it was Spring that you said that those resources from COVID are gone. The resources that are coming in now for food system growth, I think that the biggest obstacle and the biggest opportunity is how to work together to figure out how to create a sustainable pathway forward, right? Because we know the funds are short term. So it's how do we, how do we work together and build agency to continue to move this regional food sector forward? Because for me and for Basil's Harvest, that's the key to success for all of us, is creating these regional food sheds.
Thank you, Erin. Love to open it up for any group commentary, supports, questions.
Yeah, I want to jump in on what you were saying recently, that I'm noticing like everyone's upset now that funding isn't here. Like they're mad at me because I can't crank out that volume anymore. And it's tough because then the mom is there, like the auntie, the giver, like you're not able to do that anymore. And I'd like to see that funding from the federal government really increase, snap quick, like let's keep giving, let's keep supporting those socioeconomic barriers, that keep us alive, those kind of things. So there was some lessons learned from it that we're still carrying around. People are like, this is all I get, one box and no fish this year. I'm like, so it breaks my heart that we're not still cooking up more. We're not still in commune, like we're really had separated after COVID, went back to our old ways of just the hustle, like Courtney was saying. And we didn't really learn that much, it seems like. We're back to the grocery store and getting all the things and not back in community. So it's tough learning. So
I think one of the things, sorry, jumping in, that is a reality for us is that it didn't feel that different, right? We import 98% of our food and we're at like the end of a supply chain. And so we frequently don't have things in our grocery store, right? So while some communities was like, what, there's no flour or there's no this, our reality is that there's often something that doesn't make it. So we weren't shocked.
That just thinking about that and how you share that that's the reality of the life and the environment of where you live, and it's what came to the forefront of my mind is, well, you need to come over here to the United States and share how you do it and how we coordinate. How do we bring this together? I don't know. I'm rambling. I apologize. I just I yeah. Where my mind goes is that it's the farm bill and the issues with the farm bill and what you were speaking to, Spring, and B, we live in a country of what we feel is abundance, and that's leaving, and I don't believe that people recognize that it's leaving and changing, and that we will have another COVID. I feel very strongly about that, whether it's COVID or something else. We will experience this again, and in Illinois, I feel like we're working to put certain things in place, but um, I wondered what that was. I didn't see that was the time's up. I thought somebody's phone was ringing every time. I'm like, oh, okay. Sorry. But we
I feel
will
like we're at the
experience it again.
Grammys and everyone's cutting us off or something, or the
Yeah,
Emmys.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I do believe we will experience this again, and I hope there are some things that have continued and that will build again. So.
Thank you. That transitions well into our next question, which is about how changing weather patterns have influenced the integration of food as medicine principles in your work. And we would love to hear from you first, Erin.
Oh boy. So how the weather patterns have influenced our work. We base what we're doing is really climate change is part of what we're talking about and why we feel so strongly about, the importance of a regional food shed. both from the economic, the social, and the environmental impacts, right? Um, and as I was thinking about this question, where we live, and it's not everybody, but I feel like even saying the word climate change creates, um, you know, but sometimes ire, like it's not a, we don't believe that. I have family that they're conventional farmers and, you know, climate change, doesn't exist. And I, when I'm working with farmers, and we have some farmers who, you know, they they don't believe that, and the impact isn't there. And then we have other farmers that, how they farm is they're trying to preserve, their soil, and using practices like cover crops and rotations, and different things to help preserve, because they know that there is a change. Um, in terms of how it's impacting or influences the work that we're doing, we're trying to talk about it and respecting where people's belief systems are. So we may not use the word climate change, we may use the word extreme weather. Within our culinary medicine program, we have a sustainability piece that we bring into every class that we teach, and it's very, very tiny, but we're starting to have those conversations, and we're starting to see the interest of the physicians, so that we may get follow-up questions. We're trying to introduce regenerative organic agriculture and around this community thought process. With some of the research that we're trying to do, it's based on soil and nutrient density, and so that climate piece is a big influence in how we're trying to work and how we're trying to advance things. Um, I'll be honest, for us, in working with people, sometimes it's a really difficult conversation. Um, I don't, with our craft team, which is where the research and whatnot and the education, this is the messy space, and the messy space is actually, it's really hard for me, but it's a messy space where we all have to live, and to move forward. And that's where that this group gives us a chance to explore this.
So for me, I think changing weather patterns are really stark. One, like, we live where climate disruption is at the forefront of our annual, like, we have a hurricane season, and the intensity, the increasing intensity of hurricanes, and as well as the frequency of earthquakes, has just kind of like, you can't combat that. There's something happening with climate and environment. Um, in January, farmers were telling us about their drought conditions, right? That ponds were drying up. So, as it relates to food as medicine principles, I feel like there's two things, right? Like food preservation is going to come back, and how do we begin to preserve our foods again, so that people have access to food in seasons, in heavy growing seasons. I think there's something about around um, replanting trees and looking at what type of trees that we're planting to attract back water and moisture. There's definitely a piece about topsoil, soil health, and groundwater um in a small location, right? And so we are looking at biointensive farming, but like, how do we create a methodology that looks at regenerative and agroecological practices but can increase yield, so our farmers are not just producing nutrient dense food, but they're producing nutrient dense food that is good for the economics of their business, right? So like, it's now this holistic piece of like food is medicine, but not just for people, food is medicine for earth.
Thank you, Summer. Spring?
I'm going to share my screen again because I found some cool pictures. Um, how has climate change affected us? It's a mess. Mother Earth is upset where I live. This is wildfire season right here. And what it does is we lose all of our labor because there's bad smoke. The air quality is in the 500s. So you really can't go outside. You can't work. So then we just go do it. It kills the plants. So there's the fire. Here's the hailstorms that come. This is our Wizard of Oz event that is actually coming Saturday. It's a little early, so that's weird. It usually comes in like late May, but we have hail damage, wind damage, excessive heat. We have a 58-day growing season. We also have drought, so we're only getting half our irrigation water. So I could keep going on, but it is a mess. And just the way I see it over time and emotionally, there's been a lot of crying every time you lose something, you have to replace it or replant everything, is that our earth is sick. She's asking for help. And so at this point, when we get these natural events, I'm like, bring it, let's go. Like, how can I help afterwards? So like, unlike other farmers, we grow, like we take care of the whole property. So we're taking care of all the acreage, not just where we're growing food. So there's constant re-veg of native plants for pollinators, wildlife habitat. We have deer and elk on the property. There's a porcupine here, the coyotes, the eagles, the hawks. So after these disasters, you're constantly taking care of the whole place, not just where the money comes from, or where we hold food events or the buildings. So the way that it's impacted us is we're like lucky if the squash will finish growing or the corn at the end of the season, because they cut the water off before things are done growing. So you're like it's like we're consumed with climate change. Every day we're checking the weather all day. We don't know if we have labor. Like it's a mess growing food. It's really difficult, but I'm making the best out of it. Like now it's like, I dare you to finish growing at the end. It's like, I dare you to produce, a row of peppers. Like, and when we get it, because it's a lot of it's all traditional ancestral seed too. So we can't afford to get that seed again because it doesn't exist and only natives can grow that food. So we're in this weird thing where we're like, it grew, it's really special. Only these certain populations can have it. And that's kind of my wrap on that. Like, it's here, I'm working with it. It's okay to cry about it. And then we put our pants back on and like keep going and take pictures and learn from it and teach others how to like survive in it and be successful food producers.
Thank you. Courtney?
Yeah. So we had the opportunity to work in 5 different locations over the last couple of years that had experienced natural disasters. And in addition to like saying we were going to look at a specific disaster, during that period, COVID happened. And then almost every community we worked in had additional climate impacts or disasters occur like when we were there. So I think like the amount of those occurring and the frequency in which communities are experiencing multiple disasters at once and like the fatigue that occurs then for individuals and the stress is one thing that I feel impacts all of us as those things continue to happen, because it's just you're trying to recover still from something that maybe happened 2 years ago and then you're hit with something else, and figuring out how that works is really, really challenging. I think in addition to that, how it's impacted my work is trying to be the connector or network and helping people find resources. And so what Summer and I learned, for example, like with Virgin Islands, is like at first working there from Iowa seemed kind of crazy. We have very different climates, we have very different things going on, but having that relationship and being able to like touch base, being out of that disaster zone was really helpful. Or I think of a story Sue Beckwith has shared about fires in Texas and relying on partners in the Midwest to bring down hay for animals and livestock. And so when I think about our impacts in this space, it really does go back to the relationships too that we were all speaking about with like the importance of our work. The other thing that I think natural disasters show us, it's very similar to what we expressed in COVID, is are we checking in on our neighbors after a disaster? Do we have food for ourselves? Are we preparing and planning for the next one that comes, because it will. And so I think, you know, as we're looking at our role in this space, we're trying to create some processes or templates for those emergency plans, but that includes food and how we look at the food access, and not just like MREs and emergency food, but like what are we doing to save those seeds or to have access to storage and generators and things like that, so we can keep things at a food safe temperature. And so and I realize with that too, it means having infrastructure and equipment and funding and making those things all available, which is really tricky and complicated. Um, but having that process in place to take time to think through it, I think is really critical for all of us moving forward.
Thank you all. I'm gonna have some time here for us to debrief on that. Any questions or comments for one another? Here's some time.
So I guess I'll piggyback on what Courtney was sharing in terms of what we learned about relationship, right? Food as medicine drives back to like our humanness, our humanity, and our need to be together. And Spring, you talked about the giving first, right? Like the giving and the sharing, but also like the collective problem solving. Um, in this space where there is just more climate disruption and just more disruption, period, happening at a faster rate than we can figure out what to do with. It's like isolated or in silos, we won't actually be able to solve these problems. It needs all of the brains, and it needs brains that are working from very diverse experiences or perspectives, who know different things to kind of like inform where true innovation or true past practice might have already been a solution to something, right? Like you might know something from working in Alaska or in Oregon that I don't know that could possibly be helpful to small farmers in the Virgin Islands. And we just won't know until we're together in forums like this. So I just like the relationship, right? That social capital keeps coming up as part of the food as medicine trend, right? It's the communal piece.
I think one thing that resonates with me through this discussion, and I think it's through all the questions, not just this question, is how important it is to have multiple stakeholders at the table for these conversations. You know, it's not just one group, not one entity, as in, you know, healthcare or agriculture. It's bringing bringing multiple stakeholders to the table to have these discussions so that we can learn from each other and work together. You know, there's just so much that we don't know, and sometimes we don't know what we don't know until, you know, you have a group like this that comes together. And I think that's key to how all of this transcends.
Yeah, I agree with that. It feels like we're off topic, but I like it because I
Yeah.
want to see more responsibility and onus on these
Mhm.
stakeholders. And this isn't a negative conversation like, hey, something's not working right. You are the one who helps, and we're letting you know we need help. It could be minority, BIPOC, LGBT, you know, all the range of social things.
Mhm.
So that's, we just have to like hold them accountable and communicate. There's got to be a lot of accountability and communication, which I think as women, we all struggle with around us. So it's nice to like have that support, and that equals community and success too.
And this just shows how it's all interconnected. You know, these questions are all interconnected.
They sure are. And speaking of learning from one another leads us right into our next question. Mi'kmaq elder Albert Marshall uses the term two-eyed seeing to conceptualize the coexistence of Indigenous and Western ways of knowing, and to recognize the strengths of these approaches individually and in combination. So today we're wondering, how do you utilize this approach within your work as food as medicine? And Courtney, we would love to hear from you first.
I was hoping someone else was going to go, but I will take it. So been learning more about the two-eyed seeing approach from a lot of the research Casey has been doing and some partners. And so when I was reflecting on this question, I think to me, it's been an incredible lesson into being able to carry like multiple perspectives too at once. And so we just went through the intercultural development inventory course as well. And I think that was really interesting too, in comparison to the two-eyed seeing approach, for just respecting and looking at so many different cultures, religious beliefs, indigenous knowledge. Like there's so many things that happen all at once. And so I feel that a little bit with this question too, of how we can learn and respect indigenous ways and also hold Western practices at the same time, and be able to push back on when we need to as well. So I believe our team, when we've tried to approach and start to utilize these things, it's really pushed us to be open and transparent in our discussions, and really ways of working with community and understanding all partners. And similar to what we were just talking about with relationships, but really trying to come to the space with like intention for not doing onto, but being a part of a solution and working in that space. I think the only other piece I wanted to mention is the two-eyed seeing approach. I think also really pushes us to learn about our history and the practices that have been done and what we need to do to honor that history, because it has happened, and things that need to change in the future because of it. And so I believe that's a dynamic component of these conversations as well. And the last thing, I guess, on my mind with this question is, with that, really being able to showcase how we want to like lift all boats. And so I was thinking about the book, The Sum of Us, and how all things need to be considered and really leaned into for supporting all members of our community.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I think what I'm looking for strengths here really hard. I think we just struggle a lot with really having to force our TEK and like our ways of growing food, having traditional pathways. We're constantly like, we're over here, we're the OGs, this is how we do it, this is how it should be done. It feels competitive, it feels like we're not heard, we're not taken seriously, and then tokenized once someone figures out that, oh, that's how we should be doing it. And you're like, oh, we've been trying to tell you. One thing that I think is a positive, which could be seen as a negative too, is that we need that technology. We need that non-native technology that has been kind of, there's pros to it. There's, soil moisture sensors, weather stations, pumps, like all this innovative technology that's helping us, balance that climate change, and also a need for, production, go. Paying the bills. So it just seems like this kind of colonized cycle that we're squeezing ourselves into to fit in, when we just really want to simplify things, feed our people, and keep things really simple, because that's what the earth is telling us. It doesn't want to be mass soil harvested, it replanted over and over. We only grow our foods once, one crop, harvest in the fall. It reduces damage to the soil, the environment, reduces labor cost, inputs, outputs. Seems pretty simple. Seems like a great business model for food production, but I did enjoy reading through it. And I think it just goes back to like securing those 7 generations. What are we doing now with all the chaotic climate issues, the economy, social issues, our health issues, to like take a deep breath and figure out how we're going to secure our 7 generations and learn from what has been given to us? How can we get it out and make it secure enough so that the youth will grab onto it and continue? I hope that's helpful.
Erin, you are up next.
Oh, thank you. So to be honest, I had never heard of the two-eyed seeing approach, so that was new to me. And when I first read the question, I thought, uh-oh. And then and then I went in and I was reading up on it, and I just had honestly, I had to sit back and take the black and white away and just sit with it for a while, which in some ways I believe is that holistic piece of, we have the that holistic piece of just sitting with it and to be with it and what comes from that, what resonates. And so as I was thinking about this, the analogy in my mind was, okay, the black and white is that Western, you do X, Y, and Z to treat, to cure, and then this other side, the holistic, or the the I say emotional because I think about emotional health, emotional well-being. That's the indigenous, that's the other side of this. And so as I was sitting with this and thinking about the question, how do we utilize this approach with the work that we're doing, there were a couple things that came to mind. One, I believe that we we are doing both, but I will say in my mind, and this is me personally, that I lean to the Western, or the black and white piece. So I have to think about the emotional piece. That's how I differentiate it. But what came to my mind were two things. One, um, one of the classes that we just taught, we took 2 weeks of coursework, and the last class was bringing the gold nuggets together and taking the students, and these were medical students, into a space that was nature. It was outside, and I needed to think about what were the gold nuggets of the lessons that were taught in the classroom, and let's bring them into nature and create this experiential moment. And the first thing that I did is that I had all of us stand in a circle and get centered with where we were, put everything down on the ground and just center ourselves, asking them to take some deep breaths and to keep their eyes open and to think and to feel all five senses. What do they see? What do they smell? What's touching them, like the wind? The taste piece, we were going to get to that, but what do we smell? And so we were able to center ourselves within nature, and we were able to talk through what they had learned around conventional. Oh, this is a long answer. I'm sorry. Just can I take a couple of seconds? What we could take, we were in a garden space with trees and gardens, and you could hear the birds. You could hear around you, and we were lucky to have a soybean field that was farmed conventionally, and we walked into that soybean field, nothing. You could hear nothing. And the light bulbs went off with these students, and that they could connect the dots to what the conventional farmer was talking about, what the regenerative farmer was talking about. Then we went into the garden and we tasted all these foods in the garden. Then they harvested and we went into the kitchen and we cooked, and then we connected it to the gut microbiome. I mean, it was beautiful. So that's that piece of, the Western piece and how we brought in the indigenous piece. And so that made me very happy that I actually had something to share and go over time on this question. So thank you for letting me go over.
Thank you for sharing. Summer, would love to hear from you.
I think this is the hardest question for me because I personally feel like I live in a place that's actively colonized, right? And there is a tension between people trying to maintain identity, and we wouldn't call it two-eyed seeing, right? But it is more of that, like who we are and how we would be in practice together and how we would be in community together, and like what does circle mean to us, and like what time, the use of time, right? Like and how we may be softer or even harder in places, right? That seem outside of like Western context, which seems very like straight and rigid, and it's only done this way. How much effort I'm putting into unlearning that, right? And hoping that my team and even in my organization, like we unlearn that and become more fluid. And so, right, there is like this just constant tension between like the Western way of being that feels very dominating and oppressive here as a territory of the US, right? That still has an apostrophe S as though we are a possession, right? That fight that doesn't seem to be centered in the national context, and wanting to like embrace our whole identity and relearn it and reconnect to it and like search for it, right? Like what are our African ways of being, right? What the indigenous people do, and like even introducing it to our team. We're on a project. This is a really cool story. We're on a project with Hawaii, Alaska, and other territories, and one of my team members said, because in the beginning of every meeting, when it's us as a whole group, we take time to do a circle activity, right? Where you bring in an ancestor, bring in someone you talk, and you talk about how you're feeling today. And the person messaged me, it's like, it's really hard for me to get into like the first 30 minutes of a meeting being this very human-centered kind of village check-in, right? Because it feels inefficient to the team. Let's jump into the work, as opposed to like a concept of two I seeing. It's like, let's jump into our relationship. Let's establish our connection. Let's remember our ancestors, or let's bring in our future generations, right? Let's talk about intention and why we are doing this, even before we talk about what we're doing is, and to people from the Virgin Islands in everyday business practice. My my best friend said to me, "Can you work someplace where you don't stand in circle and sing kumbaya?" Like she's right, because that's what it feels like to a lot of people who don't work in like village community, where like we're thinking through what are our customs, right? Not Robert's rules, and some intention with it always.
Thank you, Summer. Now let's open it up to the group. We've got a few minutes to talk about everything you just shared.
So I think the other piece, this tension, I feel like we all sort of touched on. One of the in spring, I was smiling when you were like, I'm trying to find the strengths or like the good pieces of this. And one thing that came to mind is when I think about like specific practices of like the Western food as medicine, like the prescription programs or like the clinical practices or those types of things versus like really understanding our food and like medicinal properties of products. I feel like there's a really cool marriage though that can happen in those spaces, and utilizing and what I'm very interested in too is like the local and regional food products that can go into those prescription programs or into those medically tailored meals, or having that CSA box from your farm or whatever it is. But I think that's the like where the tension makes sense, and trying to like build that bridge for those two to connect.
I think that's tough too because of regulations. Like they're not a big fan of,
100%.
because we have FDA commercial kitchen now building. And I'm worried that when the inspector comes out, he's gonna like, you can't use sweetgrass, you can't, whatever it is, he's not gonna have it, cedar or something. And those are our staples. They're medicine as food. Elderberries, like everyone's drinking it every day now. Like it's not for that. It's medicine. You don't take, NyQuil every day or whatever that medicine might be. So I'm worried about regs, like supporting cultural food systems. it's just not, it's not a native thing. It's Black, it's Asian, it's our cultures all the way, our religion as a culture too. Like all those food systems are really unique and they need to be supported, not tokenized, but also put forward so we can thrive instead of constantly still being like, gotta hide it because I don't know if we can have it, but it's food safe in a commercial FDA kitchen. So there's a lot of things we have to work on as we close up, like a lot of things to learn, a lot of things we're waiting on, might happen in our lifetime or not. Um, I think just staying positive, it's a challenge, growing food, working with the environment, politics, people. There's a lot to learn. It's exhausting, and I look for moments of glimmer when like something is like when there's a smile on someone's face when they get that food box or a product we make, or if someone like right now has cancer and they had me to make a salve for them. So my day is good when I know that someone else is feeling good about the work we're doing.
Thank you for those reflections, everybody. We're starting to wrap up here, and I'd like to ask all of you to define the theme that we're talking about today, which is food systems connections within food as medicine. So I would like to know what that looks like to you. And let's start with Spring.
Oh, it just feels like all the things we just talked about. This is a hard one for me. How do we define food systems and connections within? I think it's the way I define it is action-based. Like I need to see people engaging, or I go grab them and pull them in and engage them because they don't know about it yet. Or they're used to grocery stores or things that are sprayed, or they have to wash things off chemicals. Like to me, it means engaging our people with education, hands-on, you know, less Zooms, more on the farm stuff, or I get flown out to different places to help people too. It like, that's what it means to me is action-based, like seeing it happen, like less people at the top writing about it at a desk, having the funding, more people seeing it done on the ground. You know, more talk and walk, like, let's go. Like, let's literally see it being done, take the picture, show everyone what it looks like, because then they're gonna do it too, and they're gonna share that knowledge. So that's how it incorporates with food as medicine.
Thank you.
I get that what it looks like to me is it's programs like Farm to School, right? I think like Farm to School is like the quintessential way to like rebuild a food system through educating a whole generation, right? So in those programs, in like a Farm to School program, my ideal would be like students in the Virgin Islands would have access to like bush tea, right? Like the our traditional breakfast drink, right? Which is filled with like herbs, locally grown, health. They would have that. Like a whole, all 500 or 5,000 children would have that every day, right? Like it would be locally grown parsley, right? Sea purslane sparsed into their salads, right? Which is adding salt to the food, but they're learning their palates are adjusting, right? To these types of just everyday medicinal things. And like by the time they graduate from high school, right, they would have learned to eat the way that we eat. So like the thing that undid our dietary palette would be used to redo it, right? And I think we're poised to use it as an entry point. So there's like farmer education, there's kitchen staff education, there's parental education, and then there's just this integration of how are we using these things again that we could give to a whole generation of people that if we started in kindergarten today, right, 12 years from now, they would be different.
So I took this question maybe way too literally. But so when I was thinking through defining food systems connection within food as medicine, at first I was like, okay, I feel like food as medicine is like a microcosm of a food system and very much focused on the health of our bodies, of our communities, focused on that like wellness component, that relational component, and the cultural connections that we can have, so that equity, the ability to have inclusive practices for any of these, what I was viewing as like medical based components, these again like prescription programs or CSAs, or being able to get a medically tailored meal. But I think it's more than that. So I think that it is the broader components too. But when I look at like the food system, I feel that we're more focused in that space around like the economics, the environmental structures, the built infrastructure needs, and how that all plays. And so all of that to say, I think they're embedded, and that one and the same almost, but really leaning into food as medicine sounds very specific. But all of us on this call are talking about like the systemic impacts and all of the different things it touches. And so that's what ties them together.
So I'm just reading the question again. Define food system connections within food as medicine. What does that look like to you? In a nutshell, for me, it looks like, or that it is a regional regenerative food system. And I add regenerative into that because it's not something that's stagnant. It needs to grow and evolve. And with everything that everybody else has shared previous to me, I agree with all of that. And I love, Summer, what you said about, if we start with a kindergartner at school, in school in 12 years, we have something that has created, or we have someone who's created change, and that can change the system down the road, right? What I haven't shared or talked about, and I know Spring, you've mentioned this as a farmer, and the farming practices of this, but we haven't talked about the mental health of farmers. And if we're talking about creating regional food sheds or feeding our communities or feeding our island, we're losing farmers every day. And the mental health aspect due to various things, but how farming is becoming, fewer farmers who manage larger plots of land. We have a huge problem here. And if I think about food as medicine, if we go back to, we started talking about the soil, but the people that are taking care of the soil and trying to improve their practices, because there is, we have farmers that are conventional farmers, that are organic farmers, that are regenerative farmers, but they're all neighbors. They're all interconnected, right? And it's not one versus the other. And we're looking at this food as medicine. It's how to bring this conversation, to maybe that level as a starting point. But that's really what resonates with me, that within this conversation that we're having is they're key connectors to all of this and everything that we're talking about, in terms of healing our planet. The way they farm is that is going to impact our planetary health, sustainability to feed urban and rural communities. There's so much more that goes into it, not just the farmer. There are all of us and all of the people that we're working with, and all the people that and organizations that we're connected with, to create this holistic system, because that really is truly what we're trying to do, is create a holistic system that is feeding rural and urban communities and investing in the economy of those local communities. And since COVID, I believe that we have this inertia, and things are happening at a slower than what I would like to see. But there needs to be more infrastructure put into this, so in terms of the food systems connections, that farmer piece is just kind of where this question led me, and some of the things that we need to consider as we work together.
Thank you all. We've got one more question. Like Spring mentioned, we need to keep these conversations alive to ensure that the action does not stop here in this Zoom room. So I'd love to end with a brief call to action. What are the individual next steps or actions that you want to see in your specific field or work or life regarding food as medicine? Summer, love to start with you.
So specific actions I want to see is one, personally, I want to move to have more of these types of communities within my community. I want to push to take the wisdom and the learning that comes out of those conversations and elevate them and share them with partners to see if we can together create a national agenda that identifies exactly kind of what we were alluding to. Like each place has these unique food as medicine factors that need to be honored and respected and made visible and incorporating it into like the two, normalizing the two-eyed way of seeing, right? Like, yes, these are Western practices, but here are the traditional and ancestral practices or the food as medicine practices that can be used and that like and have doctors' offices and have not just the food prescription program, but like give people back health, right? So the call to action is one, can we meet again off this call and be together and kind of like brainstorm, you know, continue learning from each other so that in my community, I can share and pull it out on a national level. That's me.
Thank you. Erin, you're up next.
Oh, so call to action. You know, for work, I want to see and to grow and to build by bringing healthcare professionals, ag professionals, and food system professionals together to really not only talk about this, but to figure out ways to work together through research and education and creating some of these tools so that, you know, we're working with the medical field and the agriculture field and we're bringing these people together to say, you know, how are you doing this to develop new ways of purpose and working together? You know, from my work, you know, I hope that one day that, you know, dietitians and physicians and all healthcare professionals, this time is too short, that they're talking about agriculture. They're talking about, you know, talk to your farmer, you know, and ask these questions and go to your farmer's market and for the health of you and the environment. And lastly, someday I just hope that we are designing work that is bringing the farmer and we're researching the soil and the nutrient density and that food created a market to the institution. And then from the institution, we're feeding people. And so we have this feedback loop of soil health to human health. Thank you for letting me go over.
I just have bullet points that are zingers. That we collaborate more, less competition, that there's more participation as a whole in all this food system networking, like Erin was saying, like healthcare, farm, like the system needs to come together. Some more participation in that on the ground too, our layman folks learning how to eat better and our communities, also being present, being supportive, communicating, and of course, time is money, so funding would be great. To help balance, you know, a lot of the grant funding or loans is like, yeah, it's project heavy. You have to do this project and you get this money. Well, farmers don't need more projects, but we do need the funding to invest in existing projects. So I think communicating, collaborating, and just hoping we can all work together more. It's more successful for everybody. I'm just like jamming out to your little song. Thank you,
I know,
everyone.
I love it.
Awesome. Okay, my call to action is consider your personal relationship to the food system and look at how things are working in your communities. Understanding like where the food is coming from, looking into who our farmers and processors and retailers are and have relationships with them. And then I want to go back to like the COVID and natural disaster conversation, but consider making plans for your personal, like for yourself, for your business, for communities, and how we're going to respond to those things as they continue to happen. I also wanted to end on a quote, and it came up. I was reminded based on what Aaron was sharing in the last question, but this was from a Soul Fire Farm training. And it says, the way we care for the earth is amplified and shown by the way we treat the people closest to the earth. And I think that resonates really well with our conversation.
I think that is a beautiful note to end on. That was our last question. Thank you all so very much for being here and for this beautifully rich conversation. Really enjoyed this and it's been great. So thank you so much.